Okay, so I wanted to get this video out there. A lot of folks have been asking me what settings I've been using with my XP Deus. It's such a versatile machine. There's so much you can do with this. So I've been hunting a lot with my high frequency elliptical coil, the small coil. It's really light. I just love working it both scouting and in an iron infested site. So what I did is I developed a program for scouting, and then when I get into a site where there's a lot of iron, which I like to hunt, I make a few tweaks to it. So I'm going to show you what those tweaks are. So today I'm in version 5.2. I made the upgrade to version 5 a few months ago, and then they cleaned a few things up. I'm on 5.2, which is running pretty stable with this little high frequency coil. I hunt in full tones, but that's kind of something that you can set up yourself to whatever you might like. Some people like 2 tones, 3, 4. I hunt in full tones because I think it gives me a better idea of what's in the ground. I just think the tones have a lot of idiosyncrasies to them, and it's really a tone machine. So I hunt in full tones regardless of whether I'm using my scouting program or if I'm hunting in the iron. So I guess I'll start with ground balance. I usually like to keep that at manual. 84, 85 if I can get away with it. The soil that I hunt in is not highly mineralized, as you can probably see in my videos. If I'm in some highly mineralized soil, this number will probably go up a little bit. I do manual on the ground balance. When you get into tracking, that's okay to use if you're scouting, but if I'm working an iron infested site, I think the tracking is fooled by all the iron in the ground, so I like to keep it at manual. So 84, 85 on the ground balance. Let's get into the details here. So I like hunting with the high frequency coil in the lowest frequency possible, and that's 14.4 on the little elliptical coil. That kind of turns it into I don't want to say a regular metal detector, but it gives me a little more depth than I'm looking for with this small coil. So 14.4, I'll use the higher frequencies if I'm in highly mineralized ground, or if I've got a really good spot and I want to go over it again with a high frequency. It might look at the ground just a little differently, so I will use it then. And it also works, the higher frequencies work well with EMI, or electromagnetic interference. So if you've got power poles or homes nearby, try a higher frequency. That might be helpful. So further with the settings here, the frequency is at 14.4. I've got my iron volume at 1. I want to hear it, but I don't want to hear it real loud. Reactivity I've got set at 1. And again, this is going to give me a little more depth. Silencer at -1. So that's where I've got the reactivity on my scouting program. Then moving on down the line, the audio response I have at 3. I'm not doing any notching of any kind. Discrimination I've got buried all the way down, -6.4. Now you can increase this a little bit if you want. You can increase it up to 2 or 5 or 10 if you want to discriminate out all the iron. I like to hear the iron. I like to know when I'm in it, when I'm out of it, where there's pockets of iron. -6.4 will allow me to hear every signal in the ground. Yes, it can get noisy. Sometimes your ears aren't ready for that, but that's how I prefer to hunt. Moving along here, sensitivity. When I'm scouting, I'm in that 94, 95 zone with my sensitivity. Again, I think it helps to give me a little more depth. There's no TX power. There's no expert here with that little coil. So I want to bump up my sensitivity when I'm scouting to about 95 if I can. And then it takes me back to frequency at 14.4. So there are a couple of changes I make when I get into an area where there's a lot of iron, which I've been hunting recently. I'll leave the frequency alone. I'll leave the iron volume alone. The reactivity is where I start making changes. I'm going to bump this up because I want it to run a little faster. I'll put it at 2.5 and sometimes all the way to 3. It maxes out, I believe, at 5. So you can experiment with your soil and see what works. But I like to keep it at about 2.5 or 3 with the reactivity. Then I can go into the expert mode. I can leave the silencer at -1. So that's one of the changes I make when I get into heavy iron. And I keep this the same. I keep the no notching in there. Discrimination the same. But when I get to sensitivity, and this might freak some of you guys out, I actually like to drop the sensitivity quite a bit. I'll go down to about 88 with my sensitivity. And here's why. When you're in an area that's full of iron, there's going to be a lot of spikes, horseshoes, bent square nails, things like that in the ground. Guys, your machine, when you have your sensitivity set high, the machine is going to sound off on that when you're 6 inches away from it. So you've just eliminated several inches of ground around that iron object. When you push your sensitivity down a little bit, that opens up more ground closer to that iron object. I hope I'm getting that point across right, because yeah, less sensitivity will get you less depth. I understand that. But when you're hunting in a highly iron infested area, try bumping this down to 88, maybe 90 at the most. See if it helps you squeak out a few more keepers. So those are a couple of the changes I make when I'm hunting around iron. Otherwise, everything's all the same. So I'm using I call it my Tar Heel program, and then I'll make those adjustments to the reactivity and the sensitivity if I'm in an iron infested area. So those are the settings I've been using, and have made some pretty decent finds as of the last couple of years anyway. I hope this helps out. That small coil, I just can't say enough about how well engineered it is and how compact it is. I love its size. When I'm in the woods, I can sneak it into areas that you can't fit a normal 11-inch coil. That opens up a lot of ground for you guys who are hunting in the woods. Even in a stubble field, I think you can take a big coil and you can cruise over top of the stubble, or you can take the small coil and hug the ground with it. And I just think it's a much better option. So think about that. But if you got any questions, gang, post them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to get them answered. Otherwise, if you're going out hunting, I wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. All right, here's a good example. I'm in an area, and I think you can hear this. There's a lot of iron in the ground here. But with this little high frequency coil, hear how it isolated that one? See, there's iron right over here. But right next to it, getting a nice little squeak. 90, 95, 84. So that little coil is wonderful at isolating those signals right next to iron. All right, let's dig this up and see what we've got.